I've got a question for you. Let's say you wanted to get more traffic to your content. So which of the following three options would you choose? And put your answer in the comments. So number one, create new content. Number two, improve your worst performing, or at least let's say improve your worst performing yet good that ranks content. Or number three, improve your best performing content. Which one of those three, put the answer in the chat, is going to give you the best jump, permanent jump, by the way, in additional traffic. All right, put that in the comments. I'd love to see what you think it is. So this all comes off of a conversation I was having with somebody a while ago where they were saying, okay, I've gone through my analytics for my website and I've realized that there are 5 pages on my site that produce about 90% of all my traffic. And I just laughed because that sounds an awful lot like a Pareto effect. And they said, okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work on all these lower pages and fix them because the last thing I want to do is mess up what's happening with those 5 pages. And I said, guess what? You're making it exactly the wrong decision. So here's the recommendation that I have for you for this next week, for a project for you to do this next week. It is for you to look at your analytics and then to drill in and look at your top performing content. That's where your biggest opportunity lies. So the search engines have already identified that this article that you've written about aardvarks is the best article that covers that specific area question about aardvarks, that one of the very best that they can find everywhere on the internet. And so they're already starting to send some people who are interested in aardvark questions to that page. And what we have found over and over again is that it is far better to take a page that is already doing well and improve it, which allows you to be able to get traffic for searches for other related terms, than it is to try to take something that the search engines have already said, hey, this thing isn't very good, we don't want to pay attention to this thing, and try to improve that. So the best way that you could get additional, quick, permanent traffic to your content will be for you to take your very top performing content and improve it. All right, so let's talk about how you can go about improving that top performing content. First thing I suggest you do is that you look at that, actually call it up on your computer screen and look at it and ask yourself the question, why do I think that this particular piece of content is performing so well? In other words, what have I done well so far? Look at it in terms of what is on that page. And then I encourage you to go look at some other things, like go do searches for the keywords that you believe that page is probably ranking for in the search engines. And I invite you to go actually read the top 10 or 20 pages that come up. And then ask yourself again, why is it that my page is doing well in that mix? What am I doing right? Once you have that, then start asking yourself the question, okay, I'm doing really well. What else could I do to make it perform even better? And when you start asking that, then you start adding all kinds of thoughts to your list. Like, for example, how could I make it more complete? So let's say that your article is about the best food to feed aardvarks, your pet aardvark. All right. So what could you do to make that more complete? Well, some ideas that immediately come along. So the first one is, where can you buy that food? What's the best place to get good prices on that food? Next, what other types of foods do aardvarks like? Next, how do you tell if your aardvark is healthy or not? And then how to are there food differences between a young aardvark and an aardvark in its old age? I'm stretching this metaphor here. Can you tell? And so what ends up happening is you start asking yourself more questions about what you can do around that highly siloed subject. And as you start to answer those other questions, then you start to get into other areas that are a little more outside of that. And as you start to rewrite your content and add those additional elements to it, still with high quality writing and everything else like that, what ends up happening is your page becomes even more valuable. And the search engines start sending traffic to it for more terms. And so all of a sudden that page that was getting you 1,000 visitors a month now is getting you 1,200. 1,500, 2,000, 3,000. And sometimes I've literally seen it go from 1,000 to 10,000 a month simply by upgrading that and answering additional questions that people have about that area. Next, how can I make it more up to date? Have you got some data in there that's from 2013? Well, can you go find some 2019, 2020, 2021 data that you could put in there? Are there things that are new discoveries, new thoughts, new ways, new suppliers, new things that you could add into that to make it more up to date? How could you make it easier to understand? Look first at the text. Is the text open? Are you using short sentences, short paragraphs? Do you have subheads in there? Do you have things that graphically break it up, making it easier for someone to be able to skim it, identify where they want to read, and then focus in on that? Are there graphics and things like that, which I'll talk about in just a moment? Next question is, how could I make it easier for them to implement what it is that I taught them about in that particular post? So if you're teaching them 3 steps to do blank, could you take maybe and make it 4 steps? Or could you take step 3 and break it down and make it easier for them to be able to see and understand exactly how to do it? How about, could you make it faster for them to achieve results? One of the things that's happened with the growth of online and over the last year, as well as the growth of SaaS companies, software as a service, SaaS, is that there are many people now, many places out there where we had a version of tools that we could use in the past, that we have significantly better tools that we can use today to be even more efficient and effective in doing things. Here's one that a lot of people don't think about that works amazing results. Is there a chance that I could take other pieces of content and combine them all into one and then redirect the traffic that used to come to? So let's say you've got pages A, B, and C. So let's say section A, and I'll use the simplest example, which is 5 questions about blank. And then you did another one called 5 more questions about blank, and another one called 5 even better questions about blank. Combine them and do 15 questions about blank, and then take page B and page C and redirect them to page A. And by the way, A, B, and C, choose which one's got the highest amount of traffic right now, and that becomes the page, the base page that the others redirect to. But it doesn't have to be just 5 and 5 more and 5 more. What oftentimes happens is that you'll find that over time, you've addressed the same question or the same pain 3 or 4 different ways. And what you can do then is you can combine everything that talks about solutions for that specific pain into a single page. And then suddenly, all of a sudden, you do a significantly better job of answering the question of how can they get rid of that pain? And the search engines almost instantly recognize it and start sending huge amounts of traffic. This is a great example of going from 1,000 to 10,000 views a month almost overnight, simply by taking multiple pages that all addressed a specific pain or problem that someone has to do and combine them into one and redirect all the pages that used to talk about that into that page. Bam, you've got some amazing things that happen. Now, let's talk about some other things you can do. Absolutely, you should consider adding video. It increases your time on page. It increases the probability that people are going to get the answers that they want to. It adds another piece that can get more traffic because you're posting that video onto YouTube and then embedding it onto that page. And so not only is that page getting the traffic, but that YouTube video gets its own set of traffic around it. And that video in its description can point to the written page. And so you get all kinds of just goodness oozing out of that process just by adding a video into your page. Next, or hey, why stop at one video? It's amazing how oftentimes somebody did one video in the past. So let's say you wrote a blog post about strategic planning and you had a video about strategic planning. Well, you can go deeper in strategic planning beyond your 2-page or 3-page strategic plan. Now you can say, here's how you develop your customer avatar. You can have a video on that and some more text that you can add into your strategic plan. And pretty soon what ends up happening is you could actually have a page that's got 5 or 6 videos, each one of them talking about a specific area of the things that you're talking about as you expand the power and the usefulness of that particular piece of content. Could you expand its scope? Could you go beyond the 2-page strategic plan into how to create your entire strategic plan? Or here's the difference between a strategic plan and a marketing plan. And you start talking about all those elements. And so by just looking at it and saying, what are the logical questions that someone still has when they get done perusing this content? And then answering that content in that piece, that question in that particular piece of content, you've got yourself an amazing piece of content. Next, add graphics. Here I'm oftentimes talking about things like, here's instructional graphics. Do this, do that, do this. Maybe it's a flow chart. Maybe it's just some pictures to make it easier to consume, whatever they are. Because then on top of all that, let me see if I got this, is this adding an infographic into the mix. An infographic can be an incredibly powerful way to graphically communicate what you're doing in words, to enable someone to be able to delve deeply into that. And that infographic can be a classic infographic. It can be an animated infographic. It can actually be a video infographic. I've done a number of video infographics over the years, or it can be a flow chart. Any of the above can work to add by adding additional graphic elements to your text. Maybe you add a content upgrade. So a content upgrade definition is when you've given them a bunch of content and then you say, hey, opt in to get even more. And so then you can give some even more content that helps them in that process. This won't actually help you in getting additional search engine traffic, but it can also help you build the list at the same time. Next, add outgoing links. And there are a lot of people who say, wait a minute, Don, you just committed heresy. I thought you were never supposed to have outgoing links because you don't want to take your link juice and spread it out to other pages. That's actually not a modern concept. That's been years that we stopped talking about that. So especially if you have other pages on your site where you talk about specific areas. So let's say, for example, you use a certain term and you've written an article about that. You can link that term to that other article elsewhere on your site, or better yet, you may even want to consider bringing that content into the base article. But if it's a side journey, then link out to it, and you can link to other sites too, not just your own. And another one, add related content. So when they get all the way done reading it, maybe down at the bottom, you've got 3 or 6 or whatever additional images and links that point to other articles that help them to improve their experience about that and answer their questions about this particular topic. So back to our strategic plan versus marketing plan. So your post can be about the strategic plan, and then you can say, hey, once you've developed your strategic plan, now it's time to work on your marketing plan. Here's a link to an article that helps you develop your marketing plan in addition to your strategic plan. All right? So core lessons here. Number 1, the main place you should focus as you look through all your content is to improve your best performing content. And by the way, you can oftentimes, with half a day, couple of hours, maybe a day's worth of work, whether it's you or someone else, can 10x your traffic to a given piece of content just by using some of the principles I talked about here to make them more valuable for your user. Number 2, as you do this process, make sure you're not just making your content longer, that you're actually improving your user's experience. That's what the search engines are looking for. They want to give the very best user experience. So if all of a sudden by doing this, you make it so it takes 5 seconds for this particular page to load because you've got so many graphics on it, maybe you just shot yourself in the foot. So consider the user experience and give them the very best experience you possibly can, which is one of the reasons why we put in these embedded videos, because that doesn't add to the weight of it, but it does add to the value of it as they go through it. And then the final point that I want to make is this. This is worth doing now. Not to put on your list to do sometime 6 months from now. This is worth doing now, because it can significantly change the way you show up in the world, the impact you and your content have on the world, the traffic you're getting, the leads you're getting, the business you're getting, all can be improved simply by doing this. So let me know, of all these strategies that I showed you, what's the one that is most interesting to you? And what are you going to do to make this happen? And by the way, I'd love to have you just make a little commitment to me. When are you going to do this analysis? And by the way, you don't have to spend days doing this analysis. You can just go look at your search engine rankings and look at your first one on the list and say, all right, how can I make that one better? And then next week, you can go to the second one on the list. How can I make that one better? And just keep doing that. Maybe that's what you ought to do. Once a week, you choose another article, make it better, and just keep going down the list and see what ends up happening. This stuff works. I've done it over and over and again throughout my career, both from my own sites as well as the sites of others that I've worked with. And I strongly suggest you do this. This is Don Crowther saying, just go do this stuff.